My parents called me a burden for 29 years. I overheard them plotting to steal my inherited house, saying, "She's easily manipulated." I didn't yell. I did this instead. They returned from Europe to find the house empty and their key didn't work. The phone call that destroyed my family came at 2:47 p.m. on a Tuesday afternoon. I was in the middle of showing a beautiful Victorian property to a young couple when my father's number lit up my screen. Robert Davis rarely called during work hours. He considered my real estate career, playing house, despite my six-figure income. Something made me excuse myself and step onto the wraparound porch to answer. "Emma, quick question about the kitchen faucet warranty," he said, his voice tight with annoyance. "Where did you put the paperwork? It's leaking again." I gave him the information quickly, conscious of my clients waiting inside. The kitchen faucet in my grandmother's house, my house, had been one of his few successful DIY projects, though he'd complained the entire time about the quality of fixtures I'd chosen. "It's in the filing cabinet, second drawer, under kitchen," I said. "Dad, I really need to." Fine, he cut me off. "Your mother and I are about to go to dinner anyway, some overpriced tourist trap near the Eiffel Tower. The European vacation. 3 months of luxury travel that I was funding because family helps family, as my mother had put it. I'd already transferred them $15,000 for what was supposed to be a modest trip that had somehow ballooned into a grand tour. "Enjoy your dinner," I said, eager to return to my clients. "I'll deal with the faucet when," I heard rustling, muffled voices, then nothing. He'd put the phone in his pocket without hanging up. I was about to end the call when I heard my mother's voice, clear as day. "Who was that?" "Just Emma complaining about the house again." My father's voice was dismissive, harder than I'd ever heard it when speaking to me directly. Something made me stay on the line. Something made me pull out my personal phone and start recording. "What now?" My mother sounded exasperated. "The kitchen faucet. I swear, all she does is find problems with that house." That house. My grandmother Elizabeth's house. The house she'd specifically left to me in her will. The house my parents had been living in rent-free for 3 years while I paid every bill, every repair, every property tax payment. "I still don't understand why your mother left it to her in the first place," my mother continued. "We're her parents. It should have gone to us. We're the ones who need it for retirement." "Well, once we're back from this trip, we need to have a serious conversation about our future," my father said. "Emma needs to understand that house is our security. She's young, she can buy her own place. We're in our 60s. My hands started trembling. I sank onto the porch steps, no longer caring about the clients inside. "She's been a burden from the start," my father continued, each word a dagger. "All those years of expenses, braces, college tuition we couldn't afford. And for what? Now she has this valuable property just dropped in her lap and thinks she deserves it. What has she ever done to deserve nearly $1 million in real estate? A burden. After 29 years of trying to be the perfect daughter, of excelling in school, of building a successful career, of opening my home to them without question, I was just a burden." My mother laughed. It was a sound I'd heard thousands of times, but never like this, never cruel. "She's always been selfish, just like your mother, but she's also easily manipulated. Remember how quickly she agreed to pay for this trip? All I had to do was mention family obligation a few times and remind her how we struggled when she was young." "Exactly," my father agreed. "We just need to keep working on her. A little guilt here, a little pressure there. Eventually, she'll sign the house over to us or at least add us to the deed. Her weakness is that she still desperately wants our approval." "What if she doesn't agree?" my mother asked. "She will. Emma's always been desperate to please us. We just need to make her feel guilty enough, remind her of all we sacrificed. If that doesn't work, we start talking about our health problems, nursing homes, medical expenses. Trust me, by this time next year, that house will be in our names. And if worst comes to worst," my mother added with another laugh, "we're already living there. Possession is 9/10 of the law. She'd never actually evict her own parents. Can you imagine what people would say?" "Speaking of which," my father said, "when we get back, I think we should take the master bedroom. It's ridiculous that she has the largest room when she's hardly ever there because of work. We'll just move our things while she's at one of her showings." "Good idea. We should also talk to her about that vacation property she's been looking at. Complete waste of money. If she has extra cash to throw around, she should be helping us more. We're her parents, for God's sake." The conversation continued as they apparently walked to the restaurant. They discussed strategies to manipulate me, ways to access my financial accounts, plans to guilt me into compliance. They talked about me like I was a business problem to be solved, not their daughter. Not a person who loved them despite years of emotional neglect. After about 15 minutes, the connection finally broke. I sat on the porch steps in stunned silence, my phone still clutched in my hand, my other phone still recording everything. The beautiful Victorian house behind me suddenly felt suffocating. The couple inside was probably wondering where I'd gone, but I couldn't move. Everything made sense now. Their sudden interest in spending time with me after Grandma died, their involvement in my home improvements. The way they'd gradually taken over more and more space, pushing my belongings to the corners. The constant comments about our house instead of your house. The guilt trips whenever I tried to establish boundaries. I finally stood on shaking legs and returned to my clients, somehow managing to finish the showing on autopilot. They loved the house and wanted to make an offer. I promised to call them later and drove home in a daze. The house, my house, looked different now. I saw how my father's recliner dominated the living room, how my mother's collections had overtaken every surface, how my own belongings had been relegated to my bedroom and a corner of the basement. This wasn't sharing a home with family. This was a hostile takeover in slow motion. That night, I called Patricia Winters, a family law attorney I'd worked with on several real estate transactions. My hands shook as I explained the situation. The house is completely in my name, I said. My grandmother left it to me specifically, but my parents have been living here for 3 years. Do they have any legal claim to it? Patricia's response was direct and reassuring. Based on what you're telling me, absolutely not. You have clear title. There's no lease agreement, no rent being paid, no documentation giving them any rights. The fact that you've allowed them to live there doesn't grant them ownership rights. What about tenant rights? Eviction processes? They're not tenants, they're guests. You can ask them to leave at any time. Given the family dynamics, I'd recommend giving them written notice and a reasonable time frame, maybe 30 days. Document everything. And if I wanted to sell, it's your house. You can sell it whenever you want. You don't need their permission or even their knowledge, legally speaking. I thanked her and hung up, my mind racing. Then I made another call. Marcus Wilson was the top performer at our real estate firm, specializing in quick, discreet sales. We'd worked together on several deals and I trusted him completely. Marcus, I need to sell my house, quickly, quietly, and without any public listings or signs. There was a pause. That's unusual. Everything okay, Emma? Family situation. I need this done fast and under the radar. Can you help? Of course, but you know a rush sale means taking a hit on price, right? No time for bidding wars or negotiations. I understand. The house is worth about $980,000 in this market. What could I realistically get in a quick, private sale? For a property like your grandmother's place, with the right buyer already in my network. Maybe $900,000, possibly $920,000 if we're lucky. That's leaving serious money on the table, Emma. I can live with that. How fast can you move? I have several pre-qualified buyers looking in that neighborhood, cash buyers who can close quickly. Give me 2 weeks to show it privately, another 2 to close. Can you work with that timeline? Perfect. My parents are in Europe for another 6 weeks. That gives us a cushion. The next 3 weeks became a masterclass in covert operations. During the day, I maintained my normal routine, showing houses, meeting clients, attending office meetings. But every spare moment was devoted to planning my exit strategy. I found a furnished apartment in Richmond, 2 hours away, but still close enough to transfer to our firm's office there. I opened new bank accounts at a completely different bank chain, one my parents had never used. I got a new phone with a new number, keeping my old one active to avoid suspicion. The hardest part was sorting through the house. I spent entire nights photographing every room, every item, creating a detailed inventory. I separated belongings into 3 categories: definitely mine, definitely theirs, and questionable. For the questionable items, I erred on the side of generosity. I wanted no accusations of theft to muddy the waters. In my grandmother's study, I found a box of letters I'd never seen before. One was addressed to me, dated just a month before she died. My dearest Emma, if you're reading this, then I'm gone and you're probably dealing with your parents' reaction to my will. I want you to know that leaving you my house wasn't a decision I made lightly. Your parents have always viewed money and property as things they're entitled to, not things to be earned. Throughout their lives, they've expected others, including me, to solve their problems. I've watched them treat you not as a beloved daughter, but as an investment they expect returns on. You, my sweet girl, are different. You work hard, you save, you plan. You understand that real security comes from your own efforts, not from what you can manipulate others into giving you. I'm leaving you my home because I know you'll honor it, care for it, and use it as a foundation to build your own success. Never let anyone, including your parents, make you feel guilty for what you've rightfully inherited. You deserve every good thing that comes to you. All my love, Grandma Elizabeth. I sat on the floor of her study and cried, for the grandmother who saw the truth, for the parents who couldn't love me without conditions, for the girl who'd spent 29 years trying to earn something that should have been freely given. Marcus worked his magic with remarkable efficiency. He brought through several potential buyers, all pre-screened, all serious. The third couple, relocating executives with cash to spend, fell in love with the house immediately. "It has such beautiful bones," the wife said, running her hand along the original woodwork. "You can feel the history here." "My grandmother would have loved to hear you say that," I told her, meaning it. "She put her whole heart into this house." They offered $915,000 cash with a 30-day close. I accepted immediately. The next phase was even more complex. I hired a moving company, scheduling them for a day I knew the house would be empty. I'd taken a week off work, claiming a family emergency, which wasn't entirely untrue. The movers arrived at 8 a.m. sharp. I directed them with military precision. My belongings went into a truck bound for my new apartment. My parents' possessions went into a second truck headed for a storage facility I'd rented in their names, paid for 6 months in advance. I was meticulous about the separation. Their clothes, their furniture, their photos and mementos, everything was carefully packed and labeled. I even included items that were technically mine, but that they'd grown attached to, like the kitchen appliances they'd picked out and the living room television they watched every night. As the movers worked, I found myself in my parents' room, packing their belongings. In the back of their closet, I discovered a box of documents. Curious, I opened it. Inside were letters from my grandmother to my parents, spanning years. The letters painted a picture of constant financial requests, emotional manipulation, and my grandmother's growing frustration. One letter, dated just 2 years before her death, was particularly revealing. "Robert, this is the last time I will send money without a clear repayment plan. Your constant requests and manipulations have damaged our relationship, perhaps beyond repair. I'm particularly troubled by how you speak about Emma, as if she's a burden rather than the bright, hardworking young woman she's become. I've made my decisions about my estate with full knowledge of your expectations and feelings. I hope someday you'll understand that love isn't measured in dollars and that your daughter deserves better than to be treated as a financial resource. Your mother, Elizabeth." I carefully placed the letters back in the box and added it to their belongings. Let them find it in storage and confront their own history. By evening, both trucks were loaded and gone. The house stood empty except for basic furnishings that would stay for staging. I walked through each room, memories flooding back, birthday parties in the dining room, Christmas mornings by the fireplace, quiet evenings reading with Grandma in her study. But overlaying those memories were newer ones: my father's dismissive comments about my career, my mother's guilt trips about family obligations, the gradual erosion of my space and autonomy. The house had become a battlefield, and I was choosing to walk away rather than continue fighting. I placed my note on the granite kitchen counter where it couldn't be missed. Surprise, a burden did this. Simple, direct. Using their own word against them. I took one last look around, then walked out the front door. I locked it carefully and dropped the keys through the mail slot. The sound they made hitting the floor felt like chains breaking. The drive to Richmond was surreal. With each mile, I felt lighter, as if I was shedding years of accumulated weight. My new apartment was small, modern, impersonal, and it was perfect. No history, no ghosts, no one telling me I didn't deserve to be there. The closing happened without incident. The buyers were thrilled, Marcus handled everything professionally, and I walked away with a check for $915,000 minus closing costs. I deposited it in my new bank account, feeling the security of financial independence. My parents still had 2 weeks left in Europe. I monitored my old phone, watching their social media posts about Parisian dinners and Roman monuments, all funded by my generosity. They had no idea their world was about to implode. I used those 2 weeks to establish my new life. I met with the Richmond office manager, arranged my transfer, and started learning my new territory. I found a therapist who specialized in family trauma and booked my first appointment. I even adopted a cat from the local shelter, something I'd never been allowed to do because my father was allergic. He wasn't. The storm hit exactly when I expected. My old phone exploded with notifications the day they returned. "Emma, what the hell is going on? Our key doesn't work. Call immediately." "Dad, 4:47 p.m. Emma, where are you? Why is the house empty? This isn't funny." "Mom, 5:23 p.m. Emma, Marie Davis, call US right now." "Dad, 6:15 p.m. Sweetheart, we're very worried. Please call us. We just want to know you're safe." "Mom, 7:42 p.m. The voicemails escalated similarly, from confusion to anger to fake concern. I saved them all but responded to none. By the next morning, they'd found my note. The final voicemail, left at 11:47 p.m., was from my father. "We found your little note. I don't know what you think you heard or what you think you're doing, but you've made a terrible mistake. That is our house too. We're going to call a lawyer first thing tomorrow. You've really done it this time, Emma. You're going to regret this." I forwarded all the messages to Patricia, who assured me again that they had no legal standing. "Let them waste money on a lawyer who'll tell them the same thing," she said. They found my office the next day. Jamie, our receptionist, texted me immediately. "Your parents are here causing a scene. They're demanding to know where you are. Security is on the way." My boss, Vanessa, called an hour later. "Emma, I don't know what's happening with your family, but they made some serious accusations. They claim you sold their house illegally." I took a deep breath. It was my house, left to me by my grandmother. I let them live there, but recently discovered they were planning to manipulate me into signing it over to them. I have recordings of them calling me a burden and discussing their plans. I sold my house and relocated to get away from their financial and emotional abuse. There was a pause. "I see. Well, they've been banned from the premises. Take whatever time you need to get settled. Richmond is lucky to have you." The emails started next. Long, rambling messages alternating between rage and manipulation. "Emma, you've misunderstood everything. We were tired, we didn't mean what we said. Family doesn't do this to each other. We raised you better than this. You're destroying our family over a misunderstanding. We've already contacted a lawyer. Return the money from the house sale immediately and we can work this out. Your grandmother would be ashamed of what you've done. She left that house for the family, not just you." I forwarded everything to Patricia and maintained my silence. 2 weeks later, they somehow found my new email address. The message was a masterpiece of manipulation. "Emma, we've had time to think about your actions, and despite the immense pain you've caused us, we're willing to forgive you. We understand that you must have been under a lot of stress to do something so drastic. Here's what we propose. Use the money from the house sale to purchase a new property where we can all live together. We'll put the past behind us and start fresh. This is your chance to make things right and keep our family together. You have 1 week to respond before we proceed with legal action." Mom and Dad, the audacity was breathtaking. Even now, after everything, they were still trying to manipulate me into buying them a house. I finally responded, copying Patricia. "Robert and Diana, I did not misunderstand anything. I have a complete recording of your conversation where you called me a burden and detailed your plans to manipulate me into giving you my inherited property. The house was mine, legally and morally. I sold it, as was my right. I owe you nothing, not money, not housing, not explanations. Do not contact me again. Any further communication should go through my attorney. Emma," Patricia called me after reading the exchange. "Perfect response. Clear, factual, and establishing boundaries. If they continue to harass you, we can pursue a restraining order." The next few months were a whirlwind of growth and healing. My therapist, Dr. Sarah Palmer, helped me understand that what I'd experienced wasn't just favoritism or difficult family dynamics, it was emotional and financial abuse. "They viewed you as a resource to be exploited, not a daughter to be loved," she explained during one session. "Your response, protecting yourself and your assets, was not only justified but necessary." We worked through years of manipulation, guilt, and conditional love. I began to see patterns I'd been blind to. How they'd always taken credit for my achievements while blaming me for any struggles. How they'd used guilt as a weapon. how they'd systematically undermined my confidence while maintaining my dependence on their approval. The recording was a gift, Dr. Palmer said. Without it, you might have spent years more trying to earn love that was never going to come freely. Meanwhile, my professional life flourished. The Richmond market was booming, and I threw myself into work with new energy. Free from the constant drain of my parents' demands and negativity, I found joy in my career again. 6 months after the sale, I received a call from Aunt Judith, my grandmother's sister, whom I hadn't spoken to since the funeral. "Emma, dear, I heard about what happened with your parents. I wanted you to know that Elizabeth would be so proud of you for standing up for yourself." We met for lunch, and she filled in pieces of family history I'd never known. "Your father was always like this, even as a child. Nothing was ever enough, nothing was ever his fault. Elizabeth tried so hard to help him, but he saw every gift as an entitlement, every boundary as a betrayal. Why didn't Grandma ever tell me? She didn't want to poison your relationship with your parents. She hoped things might be different with you. But she saw how they treated you, and it broke her heart. It's why she left you the house directly, with ironclad legal language. She knew they'd try to take it from you." The validation was overwhelming. All those years of feeling selfish for wanting basic respect, of being told I was too sensitive or demanding, it had all been gaslighting. A year after selling the house, I achieved a milestone I'd never thought possible. I bought my own home. Not inherited, not shared, but purchased with my own money from my own successful career. It was smaller than Grandma's house but perfect for me, a charming Victorian cottage with good bones and endless potential. The first night in my new home, I called Megan, my college friend who'd supported me through everything. "I'm so proud of you," she said. "You've come so far from that girl who thought she had to earn her parents' love." "I still have bad days," I admitted. "Sometimes I wonder if I overreacted, if I should have tried harder to work things out." "Emma, they called you a burden while living in your house rent-free and spending your money. They planned to steal your inheritance. You didn't overreact, you finally reacted appropriately to years of abuse." She was right. The burden hadn't been me, it had been the weight of their expectations, their manipulation, their conditional love. I thought about reaching out to them on holidays, wondering if time had given them perspective. But then I'd remember the recording, the calculated cruelty in their voices, and I'd strengthen my resolve. They tried to contact me a few more times, through relatives, through social media, even through a private investigator who showed up at my office. Each time, I maintained my boundaries. The investigator actually apologized after I explained the situation and showed him the legal documentation. "I've seen a lot of family disputes," he said, "but this is clear-cut. You did the right thing." 2 years after the sale, I received a final email from my mother. It was different from the others. No threats, no manipulation, just sadness. "Emma, your father doesn't know I'm writing this. We're struggling. The storage unit with our things was auctioned off because we couldn't pay. We're living in a small apartment now, getting by on Social Security. I think about you every day. I wonder if you're happy, if you're healthy, if you found love. I wonder if you'll ever forgive us. I'm not asking for money or help. I just wanted you to know that I understand now why you left. We failed you as parents. We saw you as an extension of ourselves, as security for our future, not as the remarkable individual you are. Your father will never admit this, but I will. You were never a burden. You were a gift we didn't deserve and didn't appreciate until it was too late." Mom, I stared at the email for a long time, feeling a complex mix of emotions. There was sadness for the relationship we could have had, anger that it took losing everything for her to see the truth, and a tiny spark of something that might have been hope. But I didn't respond. Some bridges, once burned, can't be rebuilt. Some wounds cut too deep to heal, and some lessons come too late to matter. Instead, I printed the email and put it in a box with the other family documents, not as a trophy or a reminder of pain, but as a closure to that chapter of my life. That evening, I hosted a dinner party in my new home. My dining room table was surrounded by chosen family, friends who celebrated my successes without taking credit, who supported me without keeping score, who loved me without conditions. As we laughed and shared stories, I thought about the note I'd left in the empty house 2 years ago. Surprise, a burden did this. At the time, it had been bitter sarcasm, throwing their cruel words back at them. Now I saw it differently. The burden I'd carried, the weight of trying to earn love that should have been freely given, had indeed accomplished something surprising. In setting it down, I'd found strength I never knew I had. In walking away from those who saw me as less than, I'd discovered my own worth. My grandmother's house was gone, sold to strangers who would make their own memories within its walls. But her true gift, the knowledge that I deserved better, the courage to demand it, and the means to build my own life, that was mine forever. As my friends raised their glasses in a toast to new beginnings, I smiled, truly at peace for the first time in my life. I wasn't a burden, I never had been. I was a woman who had chosen herself, who had refused to shrink to fit others' expectations, who had built a life of authenticity and joy. And that was worth more than any house, any inheritance, any parental approval could ever be. The burden was gone. In its place was freedom.